Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every cooked meal on Earth had disappeared. No bread, no rice, no soup, no grilled steak, not even a cup of hot coffee. Every single thing you eat is raw. For most of us, that sounds impossible. But for millions of years, it was simply life. Long before kitchens, ovens, or campfires, our ancestors survived in a world where every meal came straight from nature. There were no recipes, no boiling, no roasting, no baking. If you wanted to eat, you had to chew it exactly as you found it. And that raises an interesting question. How did humans survive before they learned to control fire? The answer isn't as simple as they ate raw meat. In reality, their diet was incredibly diverse. They hunted when they could, scavenged when they had to, gathered fruits, cracked open nuts, dug up roots, searched for insects, and even competed with some of the world's most dangerous predators for food. Every meal carried risks. Raw meat could be filled with harmful bacteria and parasites. Many plants were difficult or even impossible to digest. Finding enough calories often meant spending hours searching, digging, climbing, and chewing. Eating wasn't just part of life. It was a full-time job. Yet somehow, our ancestors survived this harsh world for millions of years. More importantly, they evolved. They developed larger brains, better tools, stronger social bonds, and remarkable problem-solving skills, all before cooking ever became part of daily life. In fact, some scientists believe that understanding what humans ate before fire may help explain why we became the dominant species on the planet. So today, we're traveling back to a time before kitchens, before civilization, before even the first campfire. We'll uncover what was really on the prehistoric menu, how our ancestors found enough food to survive, and why the discovery of fire changed the future of humanity forever. Let's begin at the very start. Fire feels so essential to human life that it's easy to assume we've always had it. But surprisingly, that's not true. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Our ancient relatives stretch back nearly 3 million years. Yet for most of that time, nobody knew how to control fire. Lightning occasionally sparked wildfires, and volcanic eruptions sometimes ignited forests. But those fires were unpredictable and dangerous. They couldn't be carried from place to place, and they rarely lasted long enough to become a reliable tool. For countless generations, our ancestors lived in a completely raw world. That meant every meal had to be eaten exactly as nature provided it. Nothing was softened by heat. Nothing was sterilized. Nothing became easier to chew. If a piece of meat was tough, you chewed until your jaw hurt. If a root was hard as wood, you either found a way to eat it or kept looking for something else. There was no backup plan. Finding food wasn't a once-a-day activity. It consumed nearly every waking hour. A typical day began with one simple question. Where can we find enough calories to survive today? Sometimes the answer was fruit hanging from nearby trees. Sometimes it was edible leaves or seeds. Other days, it meant digging deep into the ground for hidden roots and tubers. And occasionally, it meant following the sounds of predators. Imagine spotting a pride of lions bringing down a zebra. Running toward them would be suicide. So early humans waited. From a safe distance, they watched. Eventually, after the lions had eaten their fill and wandered away, another opportunity appeared. Scavengers moved in. Among them were our ancestors. Armed with nothing more than sharp stone tools, they quickly stripped away whatever meat remained before hyenas, vultures, or other predators arrived. To us, it sounds desperate. To them, it was survival. Every successful meal was a race against time. And meat wasn't always fresh. Sometimes an animal had already been lying in the sun for hours or even days. By modern standards, nobody would touch it. But in a world without supermarkets, refrigerators, or restaurants, wasting calories simply wasn't an option. Our ancestors lived with risks that would horrify us today. They swallowed bacteria. They encountered parasites. They suffered foodborne illnesses. Many didn't survive. But over hundreds of thousands of generations, natural selection favored those who could better tolerate these harsh conditions. Survival wasn't about avoiding every danger. It was about surviving just long enough to have children who inherited those same advantages. This brutal lifestyle shaped the human body in remarkable ways. Our ancestors had stronger jaws, larger teeth, powerful chewing muscles. They spent far more time chewing than we ever do today. Every bite demanded effort. Every meal burned energy before it even reached the stomach. And despite all of these challenges, this raw diet fueled one of the most extraordinary journeys in Earth's history. Because while they searched for food, something even more important was happening. Their brains were slowly becoming larger. Their tools were becoming smarter. And their understanding of the world around them was growing with every generation. But what exactly filled their stomachs? Was it really just raw meat? Not even close. When most people imagine prehistoric humans, they picture fearless hunters chasing giant animals across endless grasslands. It's an exciting image. But it's only part of the story. For much of human evolution, our ancestors weren't at the top of the food chain. In many places, they were somewhere in the middle. Lions were stronger. Hyenas had crushing jaws. Leopards were faster. And saber-toothed cats could bring down prey that humans could never dream of hunting alone. So instead of relying only on hunting, early humans became masters of opportunity. Sometimes they hunted small animals. Sometimes they trapped slow-moving prey. But many times, they simply waited. They watched predators from a safe distance, knowing that every successful hunt left something behind. Once the danger had passed, they moved in quickly. Every second mattered. Hyenas, vultures, jackals, and countless other scavengers were racing toward the same carcass. Whoever arrived first claimed the prize. With simple stone tools, our ancestors sliced away scraps of meat, cut through tough skin, and searched for the most valuable parts of the animal. And surprisingly, those weren't always the muscles. Some of the most nutritious food was hidden inside. The liver was packed with vitamins. The kidneys contained essential nutrients. The heart was rich in protein. And deep inside the bones was something even more valuable: bone marrow. This soft, fatty tissue is one of the most calorie-dense foods found in nature. While other predators focused on the meat, humans learned to crack open heavy bones with rocks, reaching food that many animals couldn't access. It was an enormous advantage. A single marrow-filled bone could provide precious energy during times when food was scarce. But eating raw meat came with serious risks. Today, we're taught never to eat uncooked meat because it can contain dangerous bacteria and parasites. Those dangers existed back then too. Every meal carried the possibility of disease. There were no antibiotics. No hospitals. No food safety inspections. If contaminated food made someone seriously ill, there was often little anyone could do. So how did our ancestors survive? Part of the answer lies in evolution. Over countless generations, natural selection favored individuals whose bodies were better equipped to handle the microbes found in raw food. That didn't make them immune. Many still became sick. Many died. But enough survived to pass on their genes. Another important factor was freshness. Whenever possible, humans preferred recently killed animals. The longer a carcass sat in the sun, the more dangerous it became. That meant speed wasn't just about beating other scavengers. It was also about reducing the risk of illness. Still, meat was never guaranteed. Some days there wasn't a carcass to find. Some hunts failed completely. And going several days without meat wasn't unusual. That's why relying on meat alone would have been a terrible survival strategy. Fortunately, nature offered plenty of other options. While animals provided protein and fat, the landscape itself supplied an incredible variety of food. Fruits bursting with natural sugar. Crunchy nuts filled with healthy fats. Seeds rich in nutrients. Tender leaves. Edible flowers. Underground roots hidden beneath the soil. And tiny creatures that most modern people would never consider eating. As strange as it sounds, those tiny creatures may have been some of the most reliable meals our ancestors ever found. When people think about prehistoric diets, they usually imagine one thing: raw meat. But the truth is, meat wasn't always available. You couldn't walk into a forest and expect to find an animal every day. Some hunts failed. Some scavenging attempts came too late. And sometimes, there simply wasn't any meat to be found. If our ancestors had depended on meat alone, they probably wouldn't have survived. Instead, they turned to something much more reliable: the landscape around them. Every forest, grassland, and riverbank offered a different menu. In the warmer months, fruit became one of nature's greatest gifts. Sweet, juicy, and packed with natural sugars, ripe fruit provided quick energy without requiring any preparation. There was no cooking, no grinding, no processing. Just pick it and eat. Of course, finding ripe fruit wasn't always easy. Our ancestors had to remember where fruit trees grew, when they produced fruit, and which ones were safe to eat. That knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. A mistake could be deadly. Some berries were nutritious. Others were poisonous. Learning the difference wasn't optional. It was survival. Beyond fruit came another valuable food source: nuts and seeds. They may seem small, but they're loaded with healthy fats, protein, and calories. Unlike soft fruit, Many nuts could also be stored for long periods without spoiling. That made them one of the closest things prehistoric humans had to emergency food. Then there were roots and underground tubers. These hidden food reserves could be found even during dry seasons, when fruit had disappeared and animals were harder to find. But there was one problem. Most raw tubers are incredibly difficult to digest. Today, we boil potatoes and other starchy vegetables because cooking breaks down their tough starches, allowing our bodies to absorb far more energy. Without fire, our ancestors didn't have that luxury. Instead, they chewed. And chewed. And chewed. Some roots took minutes to eat. Others provided surprisingly few calories despite all the effort. It was like spending an hour opening a safe, only to find a handful of coins inside. That's one reason why scientists believe the discovery of cooking dramatically changed human nutrition. But long before that happened, early humans had already discovered another surprisingly rich source of food: insects. To modern audiences, the idea may sound unpleasant, but insects are one of the most nutritious foods in nature. They're packed with protein, healthy fats, essential minerals, and unlike large animals, they don't run very fast. Termites, ants, beetle larvae, caterpillars, grasshoppers, and grubs could all be gathered with relatively little effort. Some lived underground. Others hid inside fallen logs. Many were available throughout the year, making them one of the most dependable food sources in the prehistoric world. Even today, more than 2 billion people regularly eat insects as part of their traditional diets. For our ancestors, they weren't a last resort. They were simply food. And then there was one final prize: honey. Few foods in nature contain as much readily available energy as honey. One successful honey harvest could provide thousands of calories in a single day. The challenge wasn't eating it. The challenge was surviving the bees, climbing tall trees, reaching into hidden hives, enduring countless painful stings. It was dangerous work, but the reward was worth it. For prehistoric humans, honey wasn't just a sweet treat. It was one of the richest energy sources they could ever hope to find. When you put all of these foods together, fruit, nuts, seeds, roots, insects, honey, and occasional meat, a very different picture begins to emerge. Our ancestors weren't eating one simple prehistoric diet. They were constantly adapting. Every season changed the menu. Every landscape offered new opportunities. Every day required different decisions. And that flexibility became one of humanity's greatest strengths. Because surviving wasn't about being the strongest animal on Earth. It was about making the smartest choices with whatever nature happened to provide. That ability to adapt would eventually change far more than our diet. It would reshape our bodies, our brains, and ultimately, the future of our entire species. For millions of years, humans survived on a completely raw diet. It wasn't easy. Every meal demanded time, energy, and effort. Tough meat had to be chewed for minutes. Fibrous plants were difficult to digest. Many calories remained locked inside food, passing through the body without ever being absorbed. Simply eating enough became one of life's biggest challenges. And that challenge shaped the human body. If you could travel back in time and meet one of our early ancestors, one of the first things you'd notice is their face. Their jaws were broader. Their teeth were larger. Their chewing muscles were incredibly powerful. Unlike us, they couldn't rely on cooking to soften their food. Every bite required real strength. Scientists can actually see this in ancient fossils. The wear patterns on prehistoric teeth tell a remarkable story. Tiny scratches and pits reveal years of grinding tough plants, crushing hard seeds, and chewing raw meat. Their teeth became a record of everything they had eaten. But the changes didn't stop there. Inside the body, another transformation was taking place. Compared to other great apes, modern humans have a surprisingly small digestive system. At first, that seems strange. You'd expect a species with such a varied diet to need a larger gut. But there's a reason. Cooking does much of the digestive work before food even enters the body. Heat softens meat. It breaks down plant fibers. It unlocks starches. It destroys many harmful microbes. In other words, cooking allows the body to spend less energy digesting food while absorbing more calories from every bite. That extra energy had to go somewhere. Many scientists believe it helped fuel the growth of our most energy-hungry organ, the human brain. Although it makes up only about 2% of our body weight, the brain consumes around 20% of our daily energy. Keeping such an expensive organ running requires a constant supply of calories. A raw diet made that much harder. A cooked diet changed the equation completely. With more energy available from the same amount of food, our ancestors could support larger brains without dramatically increasing the amount they ate. This idea is known as the expensive tissue hypothesis. The theory suggests that as cooking made digestion easier, the body no longer needed such a large digestive system. Over countless generations, the gut became smaller. The energy it once required could instead support a growing brain. While scientists continue to debate exactly how much cooking contributed, few disagree on one point: fire transformed human evolution. It didn't happen overnight. There wasn't a single moment when one clever ancestor lit the world's first permanent campfire and everything changed. It was a gradual process. Generation after generation learned to control flames, protect them, carry them, use them. Eventually, fire became as essential as food itself. But before that happened, our ancestors had already spent millions of years solving problems without it. They had learned where to search for food, which plants were safe, which animals were worth hunting, when to scavenge, how to crack open bones for marrow, how to gather honey without giving up after the first sting. Every lesson was earned through experience. Every generation passed that knowledge to the next. And slowly, human intelligence grew alongside it. Because survival wasn't just about strength. It was about learning, remembering, adapting. Long before fire transformed our food, it was curiosity that transformed us. And that curiosity would soon unlock one of the greatest discoveries in human history: the ability to cook. A breakthrough that would change not only what humans ate, but what humans could become. When we think about fire, we usually think about cooking. But cooking was only the beginning. Fire transformed nearly every part of human life. It made food safer. It made food easier to digest. But perhaps more importantly, it changed how people lived together. Before fire, every meal came with a deadline. A large animal couldn't be stored for very long. Without refrigeration, smoking, or drying, meat spoiled quickly, especially in warm climates. That meant there was only one real option: eat it immediately, or share it. Imagine a small group of early humans finding the remains of a large animal. There was far more meat than one person could finish. Keeping it for tomorrow wasn't realistic. Within a day or two, much of it would become unsafe to eat. So the food was divided among the group. Everyone ate. Nothing went to waste. And over time, something remarkable happened. Sharing became more than just a practical solution. It became a survival strategy. The people who shared food today might receive help tomorrow. Those relationships built trust. Trust created stronger communities. And stronger communities had a better chance of surviving. Food didn't just feed people. It connected them. Fire also solved another invisible problem: water. Today, turning on a faucet is something we rarely think about. But for our ancestors, finding clean drinking water was a daily challenge. Rivers, lakes, ponds, even clear-looking streams could contain dangerous bacteria, parasites, and microscopic organisms capable of causing serious illness. Before fire, there was no simple way to make contaminated water safe. People learned through experience. Some water sources were dependable. Others made people sick. That knowledge became just as valuable as knowing where to find food. Once humans learned to boil water, another major survival problem became far easier to manage. Disease didn't disappear. But one of nature's biggest threats became much easier to control. Fire also extended the day itself. Before controlled fire, darkness brought activity to an abrupt end. When the sun disappeared, so did visibility. Predators became harder to spot. Travel became dangerous. Most activities simply stopped. But a controlled fire changed everything. Its light allowed people to remain awake after sunset. Families gathered together. Meals were shared. Stories were told. Knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. Some researchers even believe that these evenings around the fire helped strengthen language, cooperation, and culture. For the first time, humans weren't just surviving the day. They were learning from it, planning for tomorrow, and imagining a better future. Looking back, it's easy to assume our ancestors lived simple lives. But the opposite is true. Every day demanded hundreds of decisions. Which path should we take? Which plants are safe? Should we hunt? Or scavenge? Is that water safe to drink? Can we risk climbing that tree for honey? Should we eat now? Or keep searching for something better? Those choices shaped human evolution just as much as our bodies did. Because intelligence isn't simply about solving equations or building machines. It begins with solving everyday problems. Finding food. Avoiding danger. learning from mistakes, and adapting faster than the world around you changes. For millions of years, humans accomplished all of that without a single cooked meal. That may be the most remarkable part of this story. The raw diet wasn't perfect. It was difficult, dangerous, unpredictable, but it carried humanity through the longest chapter of our evolutionary history. Then one discovery changed everything. A controlled flame. With it came cooked food, safer water, longer nights, stronger communities, more available energy, and eventually, cities, civilizations, science, technology. Everything we recognize as modern human life can trace part of its story back to that simple discovery. So the next time you sit down to enjoy a warm meal, take a moment to appreciate something our ancestors spent millions of years living without. Because every cooked bite is more than just food. It's the result of one of the greatest breakthroughs in the history of our species. And without it, the world we know today might never have existed. If you enjoyed this journey into humanity's distant past, let us know what surprising chapter of history you'd like to explore next. Thanks for watching.